Hello, hi everyone. I'm so excited for you to join me today. I have a very special guest, Katrina Ingram, who is the founder of Ethically Aligned AI. So she has a lot of amazing experience in AI and has a lot of information about how to create responsible and ethical AI practices, whether you are a consultant, whether you are working for a big company and trying to figure out this new landscape of how to use AI, how to use this in a responsible way, and more. So, very excited for this conversation. Join us in the chat. Tell us where you're calling from and what questions do you have about AI and responsible AI and inclusive AI practices as well. Hello to Dan in St. Louis. Hello, Shelby. Thank you all for joining today. It's starting to feel like spring where I am here in St. Louis. So got a few flowers happening in the garden and daffodils are blooming. And we're getting ready to start planting like tomatoes and herbs. So very excited to get things going for spring here. Right. Yes. And we have some folks saying curious about how to use AI without harm. Yes, definitely. Definitely. So thank you all for joining. So we are going to bring it over to Katrina, who is going to join us and share more about her business and about her story and about responsible AI. Hi, Katrina.
Hi, Shanae. I'm a little jealous hearing about spring because I'm in northern Canada and it's snowing right now.
Oh my God, no to the snow, no.
Yeah, we're going to have to wait a couple more months before we catch up with you on that front.
Well, you're welcome to come down to St. Louis anytime. Yes, get some of the sunshine.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be fantastic.
Yes, well, thank you for joining us today. And yeah, I'm just so excited for this conversation. And yeah, I'm just so curious about your business and your logo, which is so clever. Can you talk to us a little bit about your story and how did you get to becoming the business owner that you are today?
Yeah, it's a very non-traditional, non-linear story. So I worked in a very different industry for a long time. I worked in the world of community radio and broadcasting and media for a very long time. And then in 2017, I had one of those mid-career moments where I decided, do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to try some new things? And I thought, I want to try some new things. I went back to school at the University of Alberta, where I am in Edmonton. And while I was there, we have a very strong AI presence at this particular university. So while I was there, I encountered an AI researcher, and he was giving this talk. This is in 2018 about AI gone wrong, all of these unintended consequences, all of these bad things that were happening with AI. And he was very concerned about what he was seeing. And that's what really captured my attention. I decided I wanted to do all of my research on this topic. And in particular, what I wanted to do is I wanted to figure out how we could help people like this researcher to do better. What did that look like? And I had this sort of notion that ethics would be part of that whole conversation. So that really was the kind of the crux of my research. And then I graduated in 2020 and I wanted to keep going. So I thought, I really need to start a company to start doing this work because I didn't really see anyone else focused on this. So I did that in early 2021. And since
You
then,
were ahead of the AI craze. Yes, yes. You already knew. Yes.
I was totally thinking about this, but now, of course, everybody's thinking about it. It's on everyone's mind. And so I work with companies. I do a bunch of different things. I do training and workshops, and then I work with companies to help weave these practices into their business because that's really where it lives. And I like to think of this moment, especially as everybody is trying to grapple with this in terms of what does it mean, and try and make it really manageable no matter where you sit on this spectrum, whether you're in a big company, whether you're actually designing the product, whether you're in a small company using the product like myself. So there's really something for everyone. So that's kind of my story and how I got into this. And the logo, I'll just quickly mention, is a good reminder for me of the messiness that's involved in this work. So if you look at my logo, you'll see this very hand-drawn kind of a slash in the middle of it. And it really is about that idea that the humanity sits in the middle of all of this. And we don't always have perfect alignment. That's kind of the reality. We're always making these trade-offs. So that's a reminder to me about that.
Absolutely. And Katrina's business is named Ethically Aligned AI. So go to her website and check out the logo. She creatively has this line going through all three words in her business brand. And it just, like you mentioned, it signifies like, hey, this is a work in progress. We are in this together, and it may get messy at times, but we're going to have the tough conversations to understand how can we make lasting positive impact as well. Yes, thank you. So can you tell us a little bit more about how has your business evolved over time? So from 2020 to now 2024, and you're getting all of this news about the AI craze and all the companies making the virtual assistants from like Copilot to Gemini and ChatGPT. Have you seen any evolution of your business over the past 4 years because of the intense development that's happening as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's evolved on so many levels. So to start out, one of the first things I did when I launched my business is I did a feasibility study, which is something that a lot of people do. You go to the market, you figure out if there is market readiness for your business idea. And when I did the study, this is in early 2021, I got a lot of feedback from people saying, oh, that AI thing, that's nice. I'm not sure if we're going to do that. I'm not sure it's going to impact us. I'm not sure how it's going to impact our business. And of course, that conversation has completely shifted now with the advent of generative AI, and everybody is understanding that, oh, this is going to impact my business. I do need to contend with these issues. And so that whole conversation has shifted in a way that's been positive for me, because people they understand it's going to impact them, and they want to have a conversation about how to do this responsibly. So I don't have to sell this idea as much anymore. I think so. That's been real positive. I think one of the other impacts that I've seen is just kind of the evolution of what is AI, and that's an ongoing kind of a conversation. So AI is a lot more expansive than just generative AI or just ChatGPT, but that tends to be the thing that a lot of people know these days. So I sometimes will start there, and then I'll slowly expand the conversation into other realms as well. But it's really been, I would say, a door opener in terms of being able to talk about these issues now much more than it was even a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it sounds like people are more receptive and they're more ready to hear you out and learn like, okay, how can we actually apply this today versus you having to push them on this is important. We need to do some training and exploration on this.
Yeah, absolutely. In the early days, I felt like I always said, I feel like this was the green building industry circa 2006-ish, but now it's like the green building industry, circa 2015, or everybody gets it. And that's really empowering.
That's amazing. Yes. And Francisco is also calling from Canada. He's in Montreal. Yes. Welcome. Welcome. It's snowing there also. Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
That's great.
Hang in there. Hang in there. Yes. Spring is coming. Yes. Yes. Yeah. So I really also want to know more about your LinkedIn course. So super exciting. Katrina has a LinkedIn course where she discusses in detail about building responsible AI programs. What are some of the key takeaways from your LinkedIn course?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm so fortunate to build a LinkedIn course. I know that you know that, Sinead, as a fellow LinkedIn author.
It's a labor of love, yes.
It is, and it's a great way to reach new people. And so this particular course is really focused on the how. And that's really a question that is near and dear to my heart, because it's wonderful to have these principles. We can have these amazing 50,000 foot principles, but how do we actually implement responsible AI in practice? And so that's really what the course is all about. It is developed for companies, but I think there's good takeaways that we can all apply in our everyday lives as well. And it really centers on this idea. I tried to make it simple because one of the things that I find in this work is that there are these massive frameworks that come out from a lot of government or academic institutions, and they're like 200 pages long, and nobody really understands them. They're hard to read. And so how do you even like begin to get started? And so I was inspired by, I used to work a long time ago as a marketer, and I was inspired by this idea of the 4 Ps, because anyone who's a marketer, you know the 4 Ps,
Oh,
and you learn it and it sticks with you. Like 20 years later, I still
can you
remember.
remind us for our audience what the 4 Ps
Price,
are?
sure. Price, product, place, and promotion. So
All
when you're thinking
right.
about a product or you're thinking about a business, you kind of like go through the 4 Ps, and there's also, there's different iterations of that, but that is sort of foundational knowledge. And so for my course, I wanted to come up with some kind of 4 simple mechanisms to really think about. So in my course, we start out with context, and then we talk about culture, and then we talk about the content of your AI program, and then we get into this idea of commitment. So it's this idea of the 4 Cs, and I hang all of my content around these mechanisms.
I love that, the 4 Cs, like having a framework that people can remember and have as a standard and a guidepost as we're all trying to figure out through all the chaos, like what do we do next? Having something that we can use as a reference. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I really wanted to do is I wanted to start with context and culture first before we dive into content. Because what I see happening a lot of times is something happens in your business, and all of a sudden you're very concerned about algorithmic bias, let's say, and everybody is very focused on the one thing. And you forget to kind of look around and set this in the bigger context of the world, which is important, really understanding that, and the context of your company, understanding your values and your culture. Who are you as a company? How are you showing up? Who are your people? And that really is so important in order to implement some of the principles in action. And so that's why I start there instead of just diving right into a particular topic.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because you can't get into the solution space without understanding like what the current state is and the motivations and behaviors and like the culture, as you mentioned, like that all plays a huge part into understanding what you can actually implement from a solution standpoint. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Francisco has a great question. How can we accelerate AI awareness within governments so they can keep up with AI's fast pace? This is so timely as we see more regulation starting to
Yeah.
pop up in Europe and in the US and Canada. So, yeah, very curious about your thoughts on this.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. That's a tough question to answer as well. I mean, I think that governments are interesting. One of my recent contracts was with our municipality. So I've worked inside of government, and I've seen kind of the inner
Oh, that's
workings of
good.
how things get done, and the wheels move slowly, as
Very.
Francisco is
Yeah.
mentioning in this question. And so, I mean, the things that tend to get prioritized are the things that if you as a group of people make enough noise about something and get the attention of government, then it tends to get on their agenda. I'm oversimplifying things a little bit, but that's generally how these things happen. The stuff that politicians tend to care about get raised up from the grassroots, and enough people make noise, and then it goes through its process. It gets on the agenda of the administration of government, and that's how things happen. So I think part of it is having these kinds of conversations, like showing government that this is important, that we care about these issues, that we want to put this on the table, and that they need to do something about it. And we're looking to them to do something about it, getting it on the election issue agenda, that sort of thing. And it does take time and it takes effort, but I think the more we have these conversations, the better positioned we're able to do that.
Yeah, that sounds so much like the grassroots movement of like political movements and like civil rights movements and the things that have happened in 2020, like with Black Lives Matter movement as well, and having the people make sure that the government hears them. So important. And I love that you brought that back to we have to voice what's important to us and not stand by and just allow things to happen. That's so important. So I want to jump into some of the blogs that you have talked a bit about how AI and technology and diversity and inclusion can interact, like AI and EDI. And I'm just curious about some of your thoughts about what can we do as people who are consultants or freelancers. What can we do in this space to make an impact and help create change?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'll share a little bit of history about my blog. I started my blog when I was a student. So if you go back far enough in my blog, you'll see me trying to work out these academic questions. And I process things by writing. So that's really why I started the blog. And then when I launched the company, I sort of spun it into questions that I, as a practitioner, am really concerned about, interested in, want to understand better. And so I blog a lot for me, but I share it because I think there is benefit to what I'm saying that other people might find valuable. So that's kind of my, why I do it. In terms of the blog post that you're talking about, I had this really fascinating opportunity a couple of years ago to work with a political science professor and one of his students who wanted to do a podcast. And so coming out of radio, podcasting was sort of this natural thing for me. And they wanted to do it around this issue of anti-Black racism. And so I came on board with them as their producer. And we did this fantastic podcast called Black Talk. And it was really an education for me in kind of understanding some of the issues in their community and what people were struggling with and grappling with, and also how can we celebrate excellence as well. So there was kind of these other pieces to it. And part of how I see this connecting to AI is that I think that one of the things we need to do or we need to have in AI is a lot more diversity and representation from different kinds of stakeholders. And this is why I really think it is an EDI issue in terms of who makes the technology, because there's a whole body of research that talks about the people that make a technology, they shape a technology. And
Absolutely.
so if we have, so the diversity is so important from what technology we get, but also how is the technology impacting different communities? Communities need to be able to voice that and say, this is working for me, this isn't working for me, and be heard by the people that are, either making or deploying the technology. So I really see a huge connection between these issues.
Yeah, I love that. And coming from a user experience background, I am all for building with people, not for people, keeping people in the conversation, showing information, showing new updates early and often, getting that feedback, and making sure that we are addressing the needs of everyone and not just people who may have more privilege, but also people who don't have a lot of access and may not have some of the same opportunities. Like, how is this technology working for them as well? And I love in your blog that you mentioned facial recognition with AI tools, that sometimes it doesn't get it right with dark skin. And that's something that we also have to be mindful of is, are the tools working for everyone and not just for certain groups of people?
Yeah, and I'll just mention, since you brought up facial recognition, Sinead, there is a landmark study called Gender Shades, which was done by a researcher, Dr. Joy Buolamwini. So she really kind of opened the door and helped people see. She's got a new book out now, which is fantastic.
Yes, Unmasking. Yes, yes, I have that too. Yes,
we have the same reading list here.
We do, yeah.
But yes, this is so important. And also, this is playing out with the regulations. So what happened in December is that Rite Aide, a very big drugstore, American drugstore chain, they were actually banned by the Federal Trade Commission from using facial recognition in their stores because they were doing it so poorly. So they're not allowed to use this technology because of
they were arresting people who were innocent and saying you are a shoplifter, but they were not. The facial recognition technology could not decipher the faces of dark-skinned people well, and so they were unintentionally calling people out for theft who had not done any theft. It's pretty damaging.
Yeah. And I'm telling everybody about this case because this to me is the tip of the iceberg for everyone, for all reach, and not just for facial recognition, but in thinking about AI systems and how it's going to intersect with your business and doing the right thing and being responsible and testing things and not rolling things out without adequate, safety precautions and knowledge that it actually works for everyone. And so for me, like, this is a landmark case of saying we need to do better and we need to be accountable.
Absolutely. And we have people in the audience who work at big companies and they're starting to come up with AI policies and protocols. What can someone do who is an employee at a big company and they want to share about what they see as possible harm or issues, what are some ways that you think that they can help influence the culture at some of these bigger organizations?
Yeah, one of the first pieces of advice that I have, and I say this as someone who spent time in government, which is itself a big
Oh,
institution,
yeah.
is find your allies, number one
Mm.
thing. So don't go it alone. It's tough to do
Hmm.
it alone. What you want to do is you want to find the people who care. And I guarantee there will be people in your big company who are like you. You need to get connected to them. And then as a group, you can start talking about these issues, maybe getting to the point where you can put forward a business case so that you can get some resources to actually do this work. And it doesn't just become the off the side of the desk project, but it gets some formal recognition. And then eventually what needs to happen to really move it forward, and this is something I talk about in my course, is you need to get the attention of someone high enough up in the organization who's going to act as your sponsor and is going to help take it forward. And that's kind of a best practice that comes out of project management, this idea of the executive sponsor. And I think it's
Yes.
really beneficial in this context as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I also know about executive sponsorship through employee resource groups at companies that have those groups to help with inclusion and belonging for people at the company who maybe historically underrepresented. And I think maybe that can be also a part of the organization that can start thinking about like what are ways that we want to practice AI in ethically and conscious ways. What are some things that we want the rest of the business to think about as well? As you mentioned, propose that business case. Yes.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion as well. Absolutely.
Yes, yes. So for people who are more on the consultant side, like me, and are growing their business, what are some things that we can do to make sure that as we use AI tools like ChatGPT and like Notion AI and Canva AI, what are some things that you suggest that we do to make sure that we are not causing harm or creating any harm for anyone else while we are using those tools?
Yeah, and I'm very firmly in this camp too. So
Okay.
this is me as well. I put myself right in that solopreneur, creative kind of entrepreneur space. One of the things, and this is going to be hard for all of us to hear, but I think we all need to hear it, is that there's going to be some ethical things about these tools that we can't fix as individuals.
Hmm.
And those things really relate to the idea of how some of this technology was made. So those are things like the way the data was acquired. So there's all these lawsuits right now around data that's just been taken. Some of it's copyrighted.
Hmm.
But ethically, there's this big question. Should we just be allowed to go and take and scrape data from the internet? But that's been done. There's also issues in the supply chain of how it's made. So some of the labeling and the things that have gone into the product have some ethical issues. And the challenge is, as a user, you're not going to fix any of that. This is very much like, think about something like coffee. Eventually, we have coffee and then we get fair trade coffee, right?
Yeah,
And we can
yeah.
make better choices. We're not at the fair trade moment yet with these
Mm.
products, but I do believe that there's a market opportunity for organizations to build product and move in that direction. So that's one thing I think as a user, you just have to know that there's some problems with the technology that you can't fix. In terms of using it more responsibly, there is principles around privacy and respecting confidentiality that I think apply in the case of using it. First of all, if you put any information into ChatGPT that is copyrighted or is personally identifiable information, you might be offside with the actual policy for your tool.
Oh.
So you just need to be really aware of that.
So no HIPAA data, no medical records.
No, yeah, don't put that kind of stuff in there. That's really going to put you in the wrong direction. And even I always say too, even if it's not like a legal thing, but it's ethical. Let's say you and I talked about something off, not on a broadcast, but off screen, and it was confidential. It was clear that that you didn't want that information shared. I shouldn't be going and putting that into a chat bot and asking it things about your question that you clearly didn't want shared anywhere, because this is data sharing after all.
Right.
So that to me is sort of another piece of it. And then I think we need to sort of think about what we're doing with this tool in our workflow. So I think about this a lot, and I think about the things that I'm really good at or the things that maybe the tool can help me with. I consider myself a pretty good writer, and some of the things that have come out of the tool itself as written material, I wouldn't feel comfortable using because I think I can do better
It doesn't sound like your voice. It sounds like a robot. Yeah.
Exactly. But one of the things I'm not so good at when I'm doing videos, for example, is quick storyboarding and quick just dropping in some visuals. So I might use a tool where I'll put in my script and it storyboards for me. And then I go,
Yes.
okay, do I like
That can
that?
be fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, and everyone's different. You're going to have different skill sets that you're good at. Everyone on this call is going to be different. So I think part of it is being like really intentional and mindful about where you're going to apply the tool in what context.
That makes a lot of sense. So definitely be mindful of what type of data you put into the tool. So like no confidential data. So that makes a lot of sense. And things that people say off the record that it sounds like pretty like duh, like definitely don't do that. But just to be explicit and say like, yeah, if someone tells you something in private, like don't use ChatGPT as like a search engine to look up more information because now you're sharing it with the training model. So definitely thinking about that. And I think something that also comes up is for designers, especially people who are designing new products and marketing materials and services, is it something where we're going to get to a point of having to give credit to AI? Like this was produced with AI tools. And I don't have an answer for that right now, but I think that that may be something that comes up in the future as well.
Yeah, it's an open question, and I think that I hang out with some legal scholars, legal academics, and they're having these conversations. I believe right now, and I'll say this: I'm not a lawyer, so you should double check this. But I believe that you cannot actually an AI tool cannot own a copyright, and there was a pretty famous case. But the last name is Thaler, if anyone wants to look this up, where it went to court and basically the court said, no, the copyright for what's generated by the tool can't be owned by like an AI or anything like that. There's always a human involved in the copyright. So, but again, it's still this open space.
Yeah.
We're only like a year and a bit into this. So I think that we're going to need to see where things go. And the law takes time to work itself through in terms of case law.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Shelby has some comments. What are some of your favorite AI tools?
Oh, okay. So in terms of AI tools that I'm using right now, the one that I'm using for video, and it has AI kind of in the background, is Lumen 5. So I'm
Oh, that's
using
the
that
one.
right now. Yeah. The thing is that I'm seeing is that instead of standalone AI tools, what we're seeing is AI is coming to us in the tools that we already use. So another tool that I already use that has AI in it now is Canva. I've been
Yes.
using that for a while. And then, of course, if you're using the Microsoft Office suite, you're getting all of that built into some of these products. In some cases, you might pay a little bit more.
Copilot. Yeah.
Copilot, yeah.
Mhm.
So I think that, and it's interesting, there's standalone, free ChatGPT, of course, but there's also these other instances of AI baked into other tools that I think we're going to see more and more of that as we go. But those are a couple that
Yeah.
I'm using.
Yeah. And with the paid ChatGPT 4 version, you can also add custom ChatGPT libraries, which is very cool to see. So I've seen one where people are creating a library that has that voice, that cultural voice of the Black diaspora community. So they call it Chat GPT, like Black Chat GPT. So that's something that I'm been interested in trying out. And Nielsen Norman Group has a Chat GPT library, so you can ask it questions about user experience and design and research. And I think that's really interesting to see these organizations get specific about we want to create training data that is specific to our culture, our voice, and our discipline and our area of study. And I think there's a lot of potential there. As you mentioned, like the fair trade coffee, maybe that's where we can start building out some like more equitable chat GPT services as well.
Yeah, oh, that's super interesting. Yeah, I forgot to mention I do play around with voice as well because I love
Okay.
audio, and
Yeah.
I've been playing around with some of these synthetic voices and just seeing what the capabilities are there. So that's another tool that I think is really interesting.
Is that called Voices? Is that the name of the
The
tool?
one that I'm using is called Play HT, and I'm just playing
Oh,
around with some of
okay.
their free version right now. But they have a bunch of different kinds of voices that you can use and just try out and see. Some of them work better than, just like everything. Some of this works better than others. So I just kind of play around with them and see what's working for my
Yeah, that
project.
sounds fun. Yeah, so we're learning all the new tools. So this is good. Everyone take notes, and we'll have some notes in the show notes as well. All the tools that are mentioned here today as well. Francisco has a question also. What do you think about global regulatory markets, an approach to overcome command and control from governments and self-regulation from companies? There's some private regulators, and there may be some government mandates. What are your thoughts? I know it's a big question. What are your thoughts on
Wow,
that?
this is an enormous question. What do I think
Yeah.
about global regulatory markets, an approach to overcome command and control? Through private regulators. So I'll admit I'm not as sure that I know a lot about the global regulatory markets. It sounds like it's sort of like an intergovernmental or maybe non-governmental or supersedes government kind of approach. But I will say that one of the things that I think is going to, it is important, and I think it'll have to become more important, is because digital technology really doesn't know, it's hard to keep it confined to one nation state. This idea of like interoperability or harmonization between regulations is really important. We see that already with privacy law, for example, this need to harmonize. And I think that we're moving in that direction with the AI regulations as well. So the EU AI Act is sort of one piece of regulation that has been passed. But of course, the US is talking about a bunch of things. Here in Canada, we're talking about things as well. And I think everybody's looking to see how is this going to fit together in a way that makes it work well for everyone.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And these are not topics that get resolved immediately. These are going to be with us for many years. I believe that we're going to have to continue to evolve and grow as we continue to build new products and services with AI tools and really grapple with how does copyright work in this new space? How does privacy and security work in this new space? And continue to have these discussions and get involved as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Shanae. And it takes time, even if you think about how the law actually works. So let's say you get a regulation tomorrow, that there's a regulation there. But in terms of it being tested in an actual case, that might not happen for years. Somebody has to bring that lawsuit forward and launch it and move it forward. And like we're just seeing the GDPR, it's been around. This is the General Data Protection Regulation out
Yeah.
of Europe. Been around for a while now, came into
Uh-huh.
effect in 2018. We're just seeing some of the first cases around some of that right now. And so
Yeah.
you think about the lag, and then that's got to go through the courts, and they might be appeals, and then something will happen. So it does, as you say, it takes time for this to happen.
Yeah, it does seem like it's more on the micro level that it's going to be consultants and businesses independently creating those policies and standards first before we get any of those government regulations that are put out into the world and also enforced as well.
Yeah, and to be fair to government, they're moving pretty fast for government. Like they're now they are.
You are
They're
being
and
kind. Yes.
I shout out. I feel for everyone who has to. I would not want to be a regulator. It's a tough
It's
job,
tough.
and
Yeah,
yeah, I feel for
absolutely.
people in that role.
Yeah, I definitely think that they're doing the best that they can. But I think seeing that partnership between private industry and the government on these topics is going to be really important as well. So having the SMEs, the subject matter experts, also advise and share, like, hey, we know this technology, and we also want to help the governments make sound decisions as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I have another question for you. So you mentioned that your Asian heritage also influenced your logo design, and I wanted to hear more about that. And how does your culture show up for you in the work that you do?
Yeah, yeah. So when I was launching my company and I was looking at ethical codes, and I'd already done a lot of research into AI and ethical codes. But one of the ethical codes, I'm not even sure how I got on this, was the Bushido code. So this is the code of the samurai warriors in Japan.
Oh my
I will
goodness!
say I'm actually not Japanese, I'm Chinese, but I was very immersed in this idea of the Bushido
Yeah,
code. I was very kind of taken with it. And I started thinking about this fact that I wanted my Asian heritage to show up in this logo. So I was talking with my friend who was designing this logo for me, And we got on this idea of brushstroke and design. And she actually even bought this special digital tool to do this
Oh, love
particular.
it.
Yeah, and so that's kind of how it showed up. And how it informs my work is it's a good reminder just by looking at my logo that it's not just about a Western perspective. Like I do talk a lot about a Western philosophical perspective. It tends to be what our laws get based off of, but that's not the only way to look at these things. I think we need to sort of think a little bit more holistically. And so it pushes me, challenges me to really bring in other perspectives in this work. And I try and do that as much as possible.
I love that. And that's the whole basis of inclusivity and having collective community involvement so that we're not just focusing on one group of people and one perspective, but we're engaging and bringing in ideas from all over the world and building together. Definitely love that. Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much today. Are there any other questions for Katrina? Taking a look at the comments here. I think this is such a powerful conversation. I'm going to be going back to the notes from this call today and looking up all the tools and going back and thinking about like how can we move forward and share this information with companies and as people who are involved in grassroots movements and voting and thinking about regulations. What are some of the things that we can bring up and continue to share and put pressure on making the right decisions and making equitable practices a part of how we use AI and technologies?
That's great. I love hearing that, Shanae, because what I'm super passionate about is public education and this grassroots side of things. And I obviously enjoy helping businesses as well, but I think as individuals, everybody needs to know a little bit about this space, and we need to be able to weigh in on how these technologies are impacting us, how we think we could make them better. And that to me is like the really positive way forward for all of this. And so, especially for people who don't think they're technical, I especially love talking with them because I think it can be very overwhelming to think about AI and technology and how does it work. And I just tell them, you don't need to be an expert in machine learning to have an opinion and a voice in this space.
Yeah, but just keep showing up, keep coming to conversations like this, keep learning, keep asking questions, keep sharing ideas, because it's going to touch everyone. And we want you to be a part of the conversation. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much, Katrina. So your LinkedIn course, is it out now? Can people go access it now?
It's not out yet, and I haven't been given an actual date. I've been told to not really, give out anything definitive. I will say in the next several months, I hope it will be out. If you're interested, definitely give me a follow. I'm going to be posting a lot about it once it's available. And I'm happy to I'll let everyone know when it's ready to roll.
Yeah, so please follow Katrina for the updates on her course. It's going to be covering a wide range of topics around building responsible AI practices at organizations. And yes, definitely stay tuned to Nerdy Diva and the work that we're doing to continue to build designers and researchers who are thinking ethically about how we use AI tools in our practice as well. So thank you so much, Katrina. Thank you everyone for joining today.
Thank you.